Good morning, everyone. In the previous classes, we have completed several tools in our Java real-time project batch. So first we started with Agile with Jira. We discussed about the Jira tool that is used for project management as well as for bug reporting. Then we discussed about build tools like Maven. Okay. After Maven, with this Maven tool, we understood what is build tool, why we need to go for build tool, and what is build process, how to automate that build process by using Maven. Then third one, we discussed about GitHub and Bitbucket. This GitHub and Bitbucket tools are used to perform code integration. They are version control softwares. In a project, multiple developers will be available. They will be working from different locations. All the developers' code should be integrated at one place. That's where we are going to use these tools like GitHub and Bitbucket. If you know how to work with GitHub, then easily you can work with Bitbucket also. Good. These are the three tools that we have completed as of now. Next one, today we are going to understand another important tool that every developer should know, that is logging. Every developer should know what is logging. Logging is the process of storing application execution details to a file. So in the real time, we are going to integrate our code into Git repository. Then DevOps team will be coming into picture, and the DevOps team will deploy our application into one Linux machine. Okay. So in the AWS cloud, they will take one Linux virtual machine. In the AWS cloud, they will take one Linux virtual machine. In that Linux virtual machine, they will deploy our application. Okay. Then customers are going to access our application by sending the request. So multiple customers will be available. They are going to access our application and they will send the request to our application and they will use the application. When customers are accessing our application, there is a chance of getting some problems in the application. So customers are trying to access our application. When customers are accessing our application, there is a chance of getting some problems in the application. So as a developer, we need to understand what problems are coming, what exceptions are coming when we are running our application in the production. In the local, if you are getting any exception, in the console, you can see what is the problem. And you can fix the problem. But once the project is deployed to the cloud, once the project is deployed to the production, customers are accessing the application, then exceptions are coming in the application. When exception is coming, then it is our responsibility to see where the exception is coming, why the exception is coming, what is the root cause of the exception. So that's why what we do in the real time, when the application is executing, then application execution details we need to store into one log file. Application execution details we need to store into log file. The process of storing application execution details to the log file is called as logging. So when the code is executing in the project, multiple classes will be available, multiple methods will be available. So many users are going to access our application in the real time. When so many users are accessing our application in the real time, we need to store the log messages. We need to store the execution details of our application to one log file. The process of storing application execution details to the log file is called as logging. The process of storing application execution details to the log file is called as logging. So when there is a log file, then we can understand the execution details of the application. If there is any problem with the application execution, if any problem is available, as a developer, we can connect to the log file and we can see what is the issue, where is the problem, what is the root cause of the problem. So as a developer, first we will implement the logging, then we will get logs, and we will analyze the logs. We are going to get the logs and we are going to analyze the logs of our application to find out what is the issue in the project. So this is very common scenario when we are working in the real time. This is very common scenario when we are working in the real time. Linux virtual machine will be available. In that Linux virtual machine, 100% in the real time Linux machines will be used. Those Linux machines will be created in the cloud platform. As we discussed in the AWS, Linux machine will be created. In that our application will be deployed. Application will have a logging. When the application code is executing, application execution details should be stored into the log file. The process of storing application execution details to the log file is called as logging. Why we need to go for the logging? Logging will help us to understand the runtime behavior of our application. When multiple users are accessing our application, how it is behaving, and it will help you to understand what are the problems are there in the application, what are the exceptions available in the application. You can understand by using this logging. Okay, application log messages we are going to store into one log file. When the messages are available in the log file, when there is a problem, we can connect with that log file and we can get the log messages to understand the problems. Are you guys able to understand what is logging and why we need to go for logging? Are you guys able to understand what is logging and why we need to go for logging? What is logging and why we need to go for logging? The process of storing application execution details to the file is called as logging. What is logging? The process of storing application execution details to a file is called as logging. Why we are going to store the application execution details to the file? To understand runtime behavior of the application, we will use logging in the application. To understand runtime behavior of the application, we will use logging in the application. With the help of this logging, we can identify root cause of the exception. When some problem is occurring in the application, we can identify root cause of that exception by reading log messages of our application. How we will implement this logging in the project? To implement logging in the project, there are several logging frameworks available. Okay, what are the logging frameworks available? Log4j is available. Log4j2 is available. Log4j is available. Log4j2 is available. Logback available. Logstash available. So like this, there are multiple frameworks available. These are called tools. There are several tools available in the market. These tools are used to implement the logging in our applications. There are several tools available. These tools are used to implement logging in our application. So what is the purpose of logging? Logging is the process of storing application execution details to a file. Why we need to store application execution details to the file? To understand the runtime behavior, how our code is executing in the background. Where is the problem in the code? People are getting some issues. Where is the issue? In which class? In which method? In which line number? The issue is there. What is the exception? What is the root cause of the exception? All those things we need to understand. All those things we need to understand. For that, we are going to implement logging in the project. Okay. There are several logging frameworks available in the market. Log4j, Log4j2, Logback, etc. Okay. So the process of storing application execution details to a file is called as logging. To understand runtime behavior of the application, we will use logging in the application. With the help of this logging, we can identify root cause of the exception. And to implement this logging, we have several logging frameworks. Okay. Now, so look at this diagram, how the logging is going to work. application will be deployed. Here customers will be available who are going to access our application. Then application code is executing, execution details, which code, which method is executing, that information we will store into one file. Then when there is a problem, developer will connect with that file, developer will get the logs, and the developer will analyze the log messages to understand problems, to understand runtime behavior. How this logging is going to work? What is logging architecture? So when we are talking about logging implementation, first we need to understand what is logging architecture. So when we go for logging implementation, you need to know mainly about three components, guys. One is called as logger, second one is called as layout, third one is called as appender. Okay, so when you are going for logging, mainly three components will be available. One is called logger, second one is called layout, third one is called appender. So what is this logger, layout, and appender? So logger is a class that will provide the methods to perform the logging. So in my program, for example, I have a method called void m1 method. So when the m1 method is executing, I want to perform some logging. Okay, then I'm going to use logger.info, something like this I'm going to write. So info is a method to write the log messages. M1 is started, something like this. Then after this, at the end, I'm going to specify M1 is completed. M1 execution started, M1 execution completed. In between this, our logic is available. So like this, when our method is getting executed, we are going to perform the logging. To perform the logging, we are going to use logger class. Okay, we are going to use logger. Let's understand what is logger. Logger is a class that will provide the methods to perform the logging in our application. Logger is a predefined class. Logger is a predefined class in the Log4j framework. Logger is a predefined class which provides several methods to perform logging. Example, so if you have one method like this, in this method you can write the log messages like this. M1 execution started. M1 is a method, and we can say M1 execution started. Okay, then we can say M1 execution completed. M1 execution started, M1 execution got completed. So what is a logger? Logger is a predefined class which provides several methods to perform the logging. So M1 method is available, execution started, execution completed. Like this we can go with the logger. So what we do is, for every Java class, we will create one logger object. So you have 10 Java classes. You want to perform the logging in the 10 Java classes. Then what we need to do? For every Java class, we will create one logger object. For every Java class, we will create one logger object. So if you have a controller, user controller, for user controller, one logger will be available. For user service, one logger will be available. For user DAO also, one logger will be available. So what is a logger? Logger is a predefined class which is providing several methods to perform the logging. For example, M1 method I am taking. Logger.info M1 method execution started. Execution started. Logger.info M1 method execution completed. So in between, our actual logic will be available. For every Java class, we will create one logger object to generate the log messages. Okay, so logger is a predefined class which provides several methods to perform logging. What are the methods will be available? Example, we have trace method, we have debug method, we have info method, okay, etc. Error methods, etc. methods will be available. How to we will use logger methods like below. We will use logger methods like below. Okay, M1 method, it is our method. When this method is executing, I want to generate the log messages into a log file. Like this we will do. So if you have 10 classes, for every class we will take one logger object and we will perform the logging. And the next one, what is layout? So when you go for logging, logger, layout, appender is available. So what is layout? What is layout? Layout represents log message pattern. That means when the message is storing to the log file, what information that you want to keep in the log message. Okay, layout. Layout represents log message pattern. Layout represents log message pattern. That means what information should be available in the log message. So in the log message, we should have the date, we should have the time, we should have the log level, and we should have which thread is printing this log message, and this message is coming from which class, and what is the actual message is available. I need all this information in the log message. Okay, so layout is available. Layout will represent the pattern for the log message. That means what details that you want in the log message. What details you want in the log message, you can represent by using layout. Layout represents log message pattern like date, time, level, thread, class, and message. All these details we are going to represent by using layout. Okay, and layout we can customize according to our requirement. What information that you want in the log message, that you can customize by using layout. Are you clear with my point? Logger is a predefined class that is providing several methods to perform the logging. So the methods like trace method, debug method, info method, error method, like that several methods will be available. Okay, now logger is used to generate the log messages. There are several methods available. In those methods we are going to keep those messages. The next one, layout. Layout represents log message pattern. When the log message is printing, so I want to print the message along with the date, time, and all. Message pattern, whatever the message you are storing in the file, the message structure, the message pattern we are going to represent by using layout. Okay. Next one, appender. What is appender? Appender is used to write the log message to the destination. Where do you want to store your log message? Okay, do you want to print the log message on the console of your application? Do you want to store the log message to the file? Where you want to store the log message? So logger is giving the methods. Using the methods we are generating the log messages. Layout will represent the log message pattern. Where you want to store your message? So do you want to store the log message to the console of your application? Do you want to store log message to the file? Do you want to store the log message in the database? Where do you want to store your log message? Okay, so here appender is used to write the message to the destination. Appender is used to write the log message to destination. Okay, so you can use console appender. If you use a console appender, then it will store into the log messages will be stored into console of your application. If you are going to use files to store the log messages, then you can go with the file appender. Appender is used to write the log message to destination. Console appender and file appender will be available. Console appender will store the message to the console of the application. File appender will store the message to the file. Okay, so these are the three important components that we need to know when we want to work with the logging. These are the three important components that we should know when we are working with the logging. So guys, come on, Could you please read the points? What is logging and why we are going for the logging? Are you able to understand my point? What is logging and why we are going for the logging? Able to understand what is logging and why we are going for the logging? What is logging and why we are going for the logging? Logging is the process of storing application execution details to a file. So to understand runtime behavior of the application, we will use logging in the application. To understand runtime behavior of the application, we will use logging in our application. With the help of this logging, we can troubleshoot the problems. We can identify root cause of the problems in our application. With the help of this logging, we can understand root cause of the problems. Okay. The next one, to implement this logging in our application, there are several logging frameworks available. To implement the logging in our application, there are several logging frameworks also available. Okay. So what are the logging frameworks available? Log4j is available. Log4j2 is available. Log4j is available. Log4j2 is available. Okay, and log back is available and log stash is available. These are the several frameworks that we have in order to perform the logging. These are the several frameworks are available in order to perform the logging. Okay, logging architecture. When we are going for logging architecture, mainly we need to understand three components, guys. What are the three components that we need to understand here? What are the three components that we need to understand here? The three components, one is logger, another one is layout, one is logger, another one is layout, third one is appender. Okay, so what is logger here? Logger is a predefined class which provides several methods to perform the logging. What is the logger? Logger is a predefined class that is providing several methods to perform the logging, like trace, debug, info. So what we will use methods like below. The next one, layout. Layout will represent message pattern. So when I am writing this message, only this message should not be printed. This message should have some date, and this message is coming from which class. All those information should be printed. That's why layout is available. So the layout represents message pattern. Okay, this is the message pattern that we are going to use. I want to print the date and time, when that message is printing, and at what level that log is printing. I want to print the log level, which thread is printing that log message, and this message is coming from which Java class, and what is the actual message I want to print it. So like this is the pattern of our log message represented by layout. Then what is appender? Appender is used to write the log message to destination. So where do you want to store your log messages? Do you want to store the messages to a file? Do you want to store the message to the console? Do you want to write the message to the database? JDBC appender also will be available. Console appender is available, file appender is available, and JDBC appender is also available. So when you go for console appender, that will write the message to the console of your application. If you go for file appender, it will write the message to the destination like file. Okay, console appender, file appender. JDBC appender, that is used to write the message to the database. Okay, now see how this logging is going to work. First, we are going to use logger. Then here layout will be available, and here appender will be available. So our Java class will communicate with the logger. Our Java class will communicate with the logger. Logger will communicate with the layout. Layout will communicate with the appender. This is the logger and this is layout and this is appender. Okay. Here our Java classes will be available. Every Java class will use one logger object. So this is my Java class. My Java class will communicate with the logger object. Logger object will communicate with the layout. Layout will communicate with the appender then. Okay. Then appender is finally going to write the message to the destination. If you use a console appender, then your log message will be printed on the console only. If you use a file appender, your message will be stored to the file. Okay, so our Java class is going to communicate with the logger object. Our Java class is going to communicate with the logger object. The logger object is going to talk to the layout to understand the pattern of the message. Then layout will communicate with the appender. Appender is going to communicate with the destination to store that log message. Destination can be anything. You can use a file, or you can use a console, or you can use database also to store the messages. So every Java class will use a logger. Logger is providing methods. What kind of methods available in the logger? So mainly we are going to use a debug method. We are going to use info method, warn method, and error methods will be available. If you want to print any error message, then you will go with the error method. If you want to print any warning, then you will go with the warn method. If you want to print the information, info method. If you want to do the debug level, then debug method. Like this, there are several methods available in the logger. Using those logger methods, we are going to generate the log messages. Message structure will be represented by layout. Where that message should be stored, that will be represented by appender. So generally people will use console appenders and file appenders. Console appenders and file appenders we are going to use in order to write the messages to the destination. Are you guys able to follow me? Are you guys able to follow me? What is the architecture of this? Are you guys able to follow me? What is the architecture of this? Logger architecture, guys. Able to understand? Are you able to understand the logger architecture? How it is working? What is the purpose of the logging and why we need to go for the logging? Can anyone unmute your mic and tell me what is logging and why we are going for logging and what is the architecture of logging? Guys, come on. Can anyone tell me
it is
what
used
is the
to
purpose of it? Yeah, go ahead.
purpose is to understand the runtime behavior of the application.
Logging is mainly used to store application execution details to a file so that we can understand runtime behavior of our application. And what is the another advantage?
To find the root cause of the exceptions.
Whenever the application is
Exceptions.
executing,
What about the
whenever the
exceptions,
application
sir?
is executing, we are getting some exceptions in the application. So where the exception is available, why that exception is coming, that easily we can understand by using this logging. Okay, logging is the process of storing application execution details to a file. To understand the runtime behavior of our application, we are going to use this logging in the project. So what are the logging frameworks available, guys? How to implement the logging in our application? What are the logging frameworks available?
We are having several logging frameworks like
There are several
Log4j,
logging
Log4j2,
frameworks available in the market, like
Logback,
Log4j,
Logstash.
Log4j2, Logback, like that. There are several logging frameworks available in the market. The next one, logging architecture. What is the architecture that we need to follow for the logging? Logger
We
is
are having
available,
three
layout
components
is
like
available,
loggers,
appender is available. Okay.
layout,
What is the
appender.
meaning of logger?
Logger is a predefined class which is having some methods like
Right.
trace, debug, and info.
Logger
Error,
is a
warn.
class. Logger is a predefined class in the Log4j framework. So that is providing several methods in order to perform the logging. That is providing several methods to perform the logging. Can you tell me what are the logger methods available?
Trace, debug,
Trace, debug,
info,
warn.
etc. Like that, there are several methods available to perform the logging. For every Java class, we will create one logger object. For every Java class, we'll create one logger object. Okay. The next one, layout. What is the meaning of layout?
Layout
layout message pattern.
Layout represents log
log
message
message
pattern.
pattern.
We have several types of layouts also. We have several types of layouts. Okay. If you want to print only message, date, time, and all that stuff is not required, then it comes under simple layout. I want to format the message, then you can go for pattern layout. Okay. So layout will represent what is the pattern of your log message, what is the structure of your log message. If you want to print only message, plain message I want to print, I don't need any other information, I want to print only plain message, then we will go with the simple layout. Okay.
Sir, can you put that layout types and appender types on the diagram, sir, and share the diagram also, please?
Sure. So
Thank
we
you,
have
sir.
several types of layouts here. One is a simple layout, another one is pattern layout. Simple layout is going to print only message directly. That's it. No other information. Timing, suppose if exception occurred, I want to know what is the exception and when that exception occurred also I need. That means at what time that exception occurred, that information also I need. So that's why we are going to use pattern layout. Next one, appender. What is appender? Appender is used to write the log message to the destination. Console appender, file appender, JDBC appender, like that multiple appenders are available. Okay, now I want to perform logging. I want to perform logging in the Spring Boot application. Okay, so let's talk about Spring Boot logging. So Spring Boot already implemented logging. And in our project also, we can implement the logging. I am using Spring Tool Suite IDE, in which I can create the Spring Boot application directly. Create a new starter project. Okay, so I'm going to create Spring Boot logging application, 01 Spring Boot logging app. So I'm using Maven as a build tool. Guys, did you go through my Gradle video? I have given a Gradle video for you. Did anybody get the chance to complete the Gradle? Gradle is another build tool like Maven. You understand what is Maven, what is Gradle? Yes, some projects are using Maven, some projects are using Gradle as a build tool.
Sir, can you please cover Gradle also, sir? I don't know much about Gradle, sir.
I have given one video, sir. Please go through that once.
Okay, sir.
I will share it once again in the group today.
So that same day I told that I gone through that video but not able to understand.
Okay, got it.
That I will cover in class.
Yeah. So this is the URL which we use it to create the Spring Boot application by using starter website. This is the name of my application. I'm using Maven as a build tool. Java 17 I am using. Package is in.ashok.it. So click on next. Okay. I'm going to select two dependencies here, guys. I'm going to select two dependencies here. One is, I'm going to create two dependencies here. One is a web starter. Spring Boot web starter, which will give the embedded server like Tomcat. Then another dependency I'm using DevTools. Spring Boot DevTools I am using. Okay, web starter is used to create a web application or a REST API by using Spring Boot. DevTools, whenever there is a code change, our application will be restarted automatically. Okay, for that I'm using DevTools. Web starter, DevTools. Click on next, click on finish. So with this, my Spring Boot application is getting created. With this, my Spring Boot application is getting created. Yeah. So once the project is created, guys, you can see that in the form.xml, I have added a dependency called web starter and dev tools dependency. So as discussed already, web starter that is used to deal with web application and REST API development in the Spring Boot. Web starter that is used to create web application and text editors, font, text font. Yeah. So I have taken a form.xml. In this, we can see the boot starters available. Okay. Boot starter web dependency, boot dev tools dependencies are available. Right. Now I have not added any classes, but by default one Java class is coming. That is start class of our Spring Boot. Now let me run this Spring Boot application and check it. Run as boot application. Go to the console and see the messages. So that means when you run the boot application, you are able to see some messages on the console. These messages are called log messages only. So how we are understanding that Spring Boot application is started, Tomcat server is started, Tomcat using port number 8080. How you are able to understand these details, guys?
Log message, due to log message.
How we are able to understand that our application started with Java 17, our application using default profile, our application using Tomcat server with 8080 port number, Tomcat application taken 6 seconds to start. How we are knowing all this information? Because of log messages only. Okay, here if you observe, only the direct message is printing, or it is printing some date, time, and class name and all the details. This is
All the
called
details.
log message pattern.
Pattern.
Okay, this is called pattern. Who will decide this pattern? Layout will decide the pattern. Layout will decide the pattern. And currently, where these log messages are getting stored, where it is storing the log messages, is it storing the log messages to the file, or it is printing the log messages to the console?
Console.
Printing on the console.
That means Spring Boot is also one Java project only, right? Spring Boot is a framework. Framework means set of libraries. So the Spring Boot project is there. In the Spring Boot project, they implemented logging to understand how Spring Boot is working. So when I run the Spring Boot application by using start class, it is printing some messages on the console. These messages are telling to us how the project is getting started, how the Spring Boot is working in the background. What is the runtime behavior of the Spring Boot we are able to understand by using this log messages. In the Spring Boot, by default, the appender is console appender. In the Spring Boot, by default, the appender is console appender. The log messages are storing to the console. I don't want to go with the console. I want to go with the file appender. That also you can configure. But by default, it is using console appender. That's why when you run the boot application, the log messages are generated on the console. I have not created single class also as of now, guys. I have not created any class as of now. I'm just creating the boot application and I'm running the boot application. So boot application is started and boot application is generating some log messages. It is printing the log messages on the console. So these log messages are coming from our project these log messages are coming from Spring Boot project. Guys,
Spring Boot
these
project.
log messages are coming from our project. These messages are coming from Spring Boot project.
Spring Boot project.
Who implemented this logging?
Spring
In
Boot.
the Spring Boot,
Spring
they
Boot.
implemented logging. Why they implemented logging in the Spring Boot?
To understand the runtime behavior of our application.
To understand the runtime behavior of the boot framework. Okay, similarly, let me go to Tomcat server. So you use Tomcat server, right? You have used Tomcat server. So Tomcat is a web server which is used to run our web application. In my system, Tomcat is available. Okay, go to the bin folder and tomcat.exe file is available. So I'm starting my Tomcat server. Okay, Tomcat also will use the same port number. So I'm starting the Tomcat server now. So finish it. Now can you see what are these things, guys, when you start the Tomcat server? What it is telling here? Date is available, time is available, info, message, main thread, and this is the class name and this is the message. So can I say Tomcat server also using logging? Guys, can I say Tomcat server is also using logging?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Tomcat is also one Java project only, which is a server to deploy our applications. But how that Tomcat server is getting started, how that Tomcat server is working in the background, they are generating log messages. With the help of these log messages, we can easily understand the runtime behavior of the server, the runtime behavior of our application. Are you able to follow me? Yes, good. So if you go here, Tomcat server, we have started and we have stopped. Can you see one folder called logs folder? Can you see one folder called logs folder? Yes. Go to the logs folder. Here, log files are generated. So Tomcat server is using console logging as well as file logging also. They are using console appender as well as they are using file appender. So Catalina log is available, localhost log, server logs are available, manager log available. Let me open the Catalina log file and see the log messages. So in the real time also, our application will have log file like this. Okay, that log file contains date, that log file contains time, the log level, which thread is printing this, from which class that log message is coming, and what is the message. Okay, so this is called log message pattern. Who will decide this log message pattern?
The layout.
Layout is going to represent. I don't want all this information, guys. I don't want all this information. I just want only message. Is there any use of only message? Will anybody write only message to the log file without information like date, time, class name?
Not really.
No,
Is
sir.
there any use if I directly write a message?
No, sir. Hard to understand the purpose.
We can't understand. When that problem occurred, we can't understand. From which class the problem is occurring, we can't understand. So that's why we are going to use pattern layout. In that pattern layout, date, time, class name, message, everything will be printed. If you go with a simple layout, only message will be printed, but it's not recommended. We need to go with the pattern layout. That pattern layout will represent the format of the log message. Next one. What is the appender? What is appender?
A decision maker where the file will go.
Yes, where that message should be stored, that we are going to represent by using appender. So in the layouts, we have simple layout and we have pattern layout. Okay, coming to the appenders, we have console appender and we have file appender and we have JDBC appender. So this is all about logging. So I have not implemented logging as of now. Whatever the log messages we are able to see, those are coming from the framework only. Whatever the log messages we are seeing, those are coming from the framework only. Okay, so Spring Boot application is already having the logging. That's why when we start that boot application, log messages are getting generated and those log messages are printing on the console. Logging. It is the process of storing application execution details to a file. So this logging is used to understand runtime behavior of the application, which we are going to use for understanding the behavior to understand the problems in the project. So logging is the process of storing application execution details to a file. To understand the runtime behavior of the application, we will use this logging. With the help of logging, we can identify root cause of the exception. And to implement this logging, we have several logging frameworks also. Log4j, Log4j2, Logback. So when we are going with this logging, logger, layout, appender, these three components are important. So logger is basically a predefined class which provides several methods to perform the logging. So we will use logger methods like below, logger.info, something like this, whatever the message that you want to print. For every Java class, we will create one logger object. Okay, so in our project, for every Java class, we'll create one logger object. Next, what is layout? Layout will represent log message pattern. Okay, there are several types of layouts available. Simple layout, pattern layout is available. Appender, it is used to write the log message to destination. Console appender, file appender, and JDBC appender. Spring Boot logging. Okay, create one boot application with web starter and run the application. Create one boot application, create Spring Boot application. Create Spring Boot application with a starter web dependency. Create Spring Boot application with the starter web dependency. Run the boot application. Run the boot application and check console. That's it. We are not doing anything. Just we are creating one Spring Boot application with the web starter dependency, and we are going to run the boot application and we are checking the console. Okay, so we can see several log messages on the console. That means Spring Boot is using logging to provide runtime details, to provide runtime behavior of Spring Boot. Spring Boot will use by default in Spring Boot, pattern layout and console appenders will be used. In Spring Boot, by default, pattern layout and console appenders will be used. Pattern layout and console appender will be used. So the message having some pattern and the message is printing on the console. That's why we are saying that it is internally using console appender.
Sir, we can change that to our simple log file.
Yes, we'll change that. First, we are understanding the default behavior, then we will go for customization.
Okay.
Are you guys able to follow me?
Yes, sir.
We have seen the Tomcat server also. In the Tomcat server also logging is implemented. Whenever you start the Tomcat server, log messages are getting generated. Now, I don't want to, I want the log messages to be generated in the file also. Okay, so if you refresh your application, is there any log file available in the project, guys? So my project is available. I'm stopping my project. Is there any log file available in my project? Can you see? Is there any log file available in my project?
No, sir.
No, sir. Log file is not available. I will go to the resources folder. I will go to the properties file. Here simply I will specify logging.file. Logging.file. I'm going to use logging.file. So when I use logging.file, then immediately Spring Boot is going to generate the log messages to the file. Logging.file or logging.file.name. Logging.file.name is equal to, I'm going to use ashokit.log. So if I am writing logging.file.name, then Spring Boot will understand that this programmer is expecting to use file appender. Okay. If I specify log file name, what is the meaning of that?
That you're trying to enable the file.
I'm trying to enable file appender. So if you configure logging.file.name, then Spring Boot will understand that this programmer is expecting to use file appender. That is auto configuration. Spring Boot is intelligent. Spring Boot is intelligent. So when I'm configuring this logging.file.name, then Spring Boot will understand that, okay, this project is expecting to write the messages to the log file also. It will use both the console appender as well as file appender in this scenario. Now you see, there is no log file with a name called ashokid.log in the project. I'm refreshing that. No, nothing is available. Now go to start class and run the application, run as boot application. Run as boot application. Application started. Can you see messages are printing on the console? Can you see messages are printing on the console? Come on. Guys, can you see messages printing on the console or not? Yes, that means console appender is used. Now go to the project and refresh the project, and can you see the log file is created automatically?
Yes.
Then open the log file. Whatever the log messages available in the console, same log messages we can see in the file also. Application started, Tomcat server started, application context created, Tomcat started with port number 8080. We are able to see this. So that means we are able to use two appenders at a time. Console appender as well as file appender. Console appender is default. Console appender is default. So to print the logs in the log file, we need to add the property in the application.properties file. Console appender will be used. Okay. To print log messages, in the log file, then add below property in the properties file. What is the property? Logging.file.name is equal to your log file name. Then Spring Boot will create that log file, will store your application logs to that log file.
So there will be only one log for entire project.
Are you guys able to understand my point? Could you please read these points? How to perform logging in the Spring Boot?
So is it going to be same in the Spring as well, sir?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have created one Spring Boot application. I have added a web starter dependency. Then just I started my application, nothing else. I just created one boot application with the starter web dependency. Run the boot application from the start class. And check console. That's it. We can see several log messages on the console. That means boot is using logging to provide runtime behavior of Spring Boot. In Spring Boot, by default, pattern layout console appender will be used. So log messages will be printed on the console. I want to print on the file also. If you want to print the messages in the log file, then we need to add this property. Logging.file.name is equal to app.log. So boot will create this file and boot will store the messages to that log file. Are you clear?
So Ashok, can we create multiple log files in the same project? Or
yes, you can do that, sir. You can do that.
Okay.
Sir, can we are we able to disable the default one?
Yeah, we can disable that, sir. Customization we can do. So going forward, I will show you. I don't want console logging. I want only file logging.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Good. Are you guys clear with this point as of now? What is logging? Why logging? What is logging architecture? And how the logging is working in the Spring Boot by default. I have not written single line of code as of now. Just I created the boot application and I have started. It is printing the log messages. That means in the boot that logging is implemented. They are using pattern layout. They are using console appender. So message is having some structure and message is printing on the console. But console logging is not at all recommended because we can't see the server console. Tomorrow, whenever we deploy our application in the Linux machine in the AWS cloud, can you see the console of that machine? No. We can see the file, but not the console. So that's why always recommended to go with the file appenders, not the console appender. So going forward, we will see how to disable this console logging. We will go with only file-based logging, not the console logging. Okay, next up. As of now, this logging is happening, which is already there in the Spring Boot. Now I want to create my Java class. I want to perform the logging in our Java classes. Okay, let me create one simple REST controller, new class. I'm creating one simple REST controller, which is message REST controller. I'm keeping this inside one package called .rest package. Okay, message REST. You see, automatically server is restarted because of DevTools dependency. I have added DevTools dependency. Because of that, my server is restarted. First, let me stop this server. Now, I have created one Java class, message REST controller. I want to represent this as a REST controller. For this, I'm using one annotation @REST controller annotation. So this class is a distributed component now. It can take the request and it will give the response directly. There is no UI page. UI page is not required when we are dealing with the REST controller. Direct request, direct response. REST controller I have taken. Then I'm writing one method, public string get welcome message. Right. So here I'm going to take the message, string message is equal to welcome to Ashok IT. Something like this. Then I'm going to return that message. String welcome message, return that message. Let us map this message to one get request by using get mapping /welcome. So this is my method. This is my REST controller. So currently in this one, logging is not available. Let me run my application, go to that start class and run the boot application. Log messages are printing on the console. You can see that application is started. Tomcat server started with 8080 port number. Context path is /, so no need to keep the project name. I'm clearing my console. Now go to browser. Localhost :8080/welcome. Localhost :8080/welcome. I'm getting the message welcome to Ashok IT. But here, if you see here, Spring Boot log messages printing. Our Java class log messages printing. Our Java class log messages not printing.
Not printing.
Why? We have
Because you have not used logger method. Yeah.
Yes, we have not implemented that. These are the log messages which are coming from the Spring Boot. But in our class, that logging is not available. So in order to implement the logging, then we need to remember this architecture: logger, layout, appender. So logger is a class, predefined class that is used to generate the messages by using methods. Layout will represent the pattern. Simple layout, pattern layout is available. Simple layout is available and pattern layout is also available. Simple layout means it will represent only message directly. Okay, pattern layout means formatted message. Console appender, will store the messages to the console. File appender will store the messages to the file. When you go for console appender, it will store in the console. When you go for file appender, will store to the file. JDBC appender to store the messages to the database. But database storing is not required because that much, so many log messages will be generated. So storing in the database is not required. Okay. Generally, we will go with the console or we will go with the file only. That's it. Right. Now, in order to generate the logs from our class, then we need to get the logger object for the class. Okay, we need to get the logger object for our class. How to get the logger object? Private logger is equal to logger factory dot get logger. Logger factory dot get logger. For which one you want logger? For my message REST controller class, I want logger object. Okay, so when you are going for this logger, we are going to implement SLF4J packages, guys. What is SLF4J? I will explain in the tomorrow session. So when I am going to use logging, I'm using the components from SLF4J package, logger factory, logger. I'm using from SLF4J. Sir, what is this SLF4J? What is the difference between log4j and SLF4J? We will understand that. Okay, good. So message REST controller is available. In the message REST controller, I have taken logger object. How I am taking the logger object? Logger factory dot get logger. Logger factory dot get logger message REST controller dot class. That means for this message REST controller class logging, I'm taking one logger object. Using this logger object, you can call the logger methods. Using this, you can call the logger methods. So let me take the logger. So here I'm going to specify logger.info, logger.info. Then I will say welcome execution started. I will say that welcome execution started, logger.info. Whenever this method execution started, I want to print this message execution started. Once this method execution is completed, I want to print this welcome execution completed. That's it. Like this, I'm writing 2 lines. This is called logging. So to understand the runtime behavior of the application, we are going to implement logging like this. To understand the runtime behavior of the application, we are going to use log messages like this. So I have created one REST controller. In the REST controller, I have taken one logger object. How I am taking logger object? By using SLF4J. Logger factory.get logger, I got the logger object. Logger.info, info is a method available in the logger. So what is this logger? That is a predefined component, guys. Logger is a predefined component which is providing several methods to perform the logging. Which method I am using currently? Info method I am using. There are several other methods also available. Currently I am using info method in order to generate the log messages. Now go to our application, clear this console, stop date. Yes. Execute application.java, which is my start class of Spring Boot. I'm executing this application. It started the execution process. Yes. Log messages printed. So who is printing these log messages, guys? From where? These are from our classes. These are from Spring Boot classes.
Spring Boot classes.
These messages are coming from the Spring Boot classes, not from our classes. Clear this console. Now go to browser and send the request. Okay, refresh. I got my message. That means I'm able to execute my REST controller. Now go to console. Can you see? Our messages are printing. Can you see that? Our log messages are printing
Yes,
now.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Execution started, execution completed. So I am writing only message. If you see my REST controller, I am writing just a message. But in the console, only message is printing Along with the message is some additional information also printing.
Just
Only message is printing
info
or
also.
additional information is also
Info.
printing.
Additional
Additional information
you
also, like date and time.
Who is giving that additional information for us?
Layout. That is the pattern layout.
Layout. What is the layout it is using?
Pattern layout.
Pattern layout. In the background, it is using pattern layout. What is the, did I configure appender here? No. So default it is going with the console, and I given the file name. That's why it is using file appender. Go to my log file and check in the log file. Now you see our messages are stored in the log file or not?
Yes.
Not only in the console, our messages are stored in the file. That means in our application currently, what is happening? In our application currently, what is happening? Console appender is using, file appender also getting used. With the console appender, it is printing the messages to the console. With the file appender, it is printing the messages to the file also. Similarly, let me create one more REST controller class. Okay. So this REST controller, I'm using user REST controller. User REST controller. So how to stop this application? Okay. How to represent this as a REST controller? By using
REST controller.
REST controller annotation. Let me write here method public string get email or else get info, something like this. Return string message string data string response is equal to, so contact us. Something like this. Okay, so this is the message. I want to return this response. Now this method I will map to one method which is get mapping. Okay, then slash contact, something like this. Now in this method logging is not available. What is the process we need to follow to implement logging in this class also?
First create the logger object.
First we need to create the logger object. Okay, how to get the logger object?
Private
logger factory. Which package?
Logger factory dot get
Which
logger.
package?
SLF4J package.
SLF4J. Okay. Logger factory dot get
logger.
Logger factory dot get logger. For which class? For
User
REST controller. User REST controller dot class.
SLF4J annotation as well, right? Forget the log object.
Okay, user REST controller dot class. So store that into a variable, that is logger variable. Private logger. Okay, I'm getting my logger object and I'm storing. Sorry, I'm going to use SLF4J logging. Yes, logger factory get logger object I got. How to write the log messages now? What we need to do?
Logger.info.
Logger.info. So we can say that info get contact started. Get contact started. Okay. Get contact method execution started. Then similarly, I will specify get contact execution ended.
Completed.
That's it. So in this user REST controller also we have logging. In the message REST controller also we have logging. Now go to our application. Let us start. Refresh. Right click, run as boot application. You can go to the start class and you can start, or you can right click and you can start the application. Yeah guys, my application is started with the port number 8080. Clear the console. Now go to browser and access it. Localhost colon 8080/contact method is available. Yeah. Send the request. I'm getting the response. Go to console. Can you check our log messages are printing? These messages are coming from user controller. These messages are coming from the user controller.
User controller.
Now go to another class, welcome message REST controller, refresh. I send the request. Go to console. So you see, so both classes log messages are getting executed. Like this, for every Java class, we are going to create one logger object, and using that logger object, we are going to perform logging. For every Java class, we will create one logger object, and we are going to call the logger methods in order to generate the log messages. Are you guys able to follow me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So log4j is not logging is not completed, guys. Tomorrow also we are going to work on the logging only. In the tomorrow session, we are going to discuss about logging levels and how we will implement the logging in the real time, and what is SLF4j, that I am going to discuss in the tomorrow session. So tomorrow also we will work with the logging only. So this is a sample class I have given, message REST controller, and this is another REST controller, contact as REST controller, in which I have implemented logging. Instead of user, let me make it as contact REST controller. Get logger of contact REST controller class, get contact information method, get mapping method is available. Here message REST controller, welcome method is available. So these are the classes which I have used to implement the logging. And here logging file name also configured. So console logging will happen as well as file logging also will happen. Are you guys clear with this? How to implement logging in the Spring Boot application now? Yeah. So in the tomorrow session, we will talk more about the remaining concepts like logging levels, when to use which level, what is the rolling policies in the logging, what is SLF4j. Those topics we'll discuss in the tomorrow session. Good. Anybody having any questions, they can unmute and they can ask me.
So when we run our application locally, is it deployed in the Tomcat server or it is only run in our in local machine?
So whenever you run the Spring Boot application, it will use a embedded server concept. Whenever you run the Spring Boot application, it is not going to run in your Tomcat server. Boot will provide a embedded Tomcat server for you. Internally, one Tomcat server will be available for the Spring Boot. That is called embedded container. Spring Boot application will run in that embedded container.
So is it deployed or only run?
It is deployment. Running the web application means deployment only, right?
Okay, sir.
Sir, can we see the Tomcat somewhere, sir, that logs?
No,
the
you can't see that Tomcat, sir. This is the embedded container. You can't see that.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I think as part of this course, we are going to implement the thing in
Your
real time.
voice is very low, sir. Who is speaking?
Yeah. So, is it audible?
Janardhan, speak loudly, sir.
Yeah. So, as a part of this course, are we going to implement any real-time tool like Logstash, something like?
Yes, we will do that.
Logstash. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sir, already using the embedded server, already in console it is happening log files. What is the use of creating separate file?
Console logging is not recommended, madam. That is what I'm telling you. So when your log messages are stored in the console, every time you can't go to the console and you cannot check the console, right? And console will be erased every time. How much data you can store in the console? After 2 days, can you see the old messages in the console?
No.
That's why we will store in the file.
That part will take care of company people, or who are the developers need to take care?
Developers need to take care of it. Why company people will take care? As a developer, it is your responsibility to generate the logging.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sir, Kibana integration or putting the logs to Kibana.
Those are for log monitoring, sir. In the monitoring, I will show you with the EFK stack how to do the log monitoring by using Kibana, by using Putty. The log monitoring is different. Currently, we are discussing about this part only. Whatever you are asking Kibana, that is this part.
Sir, in an interview, the interviewer asked me a question like, how you are going to put all the messages in a one file. I was not able to answer.
You don't need to do anything to put in one file. So currently two classes are executing. Messages are storing in the one file only.
Yeah,
It's the
so
default
just
behavior.
yeah, now I know how to put that in a one file.
Yeah,
So
so
I
now
was
both
asked
class
the
messages are
question.
going to the single file only now.
Yeah, so I have to enable the file appender.
Yeah, but actually, whatever the file that we are writing, this is also not the real-time standard. This is not the real-time standard. Tomorrow we will see the real-time standard of logging. This is just
Yes,
for
sir.
our
I'm just saying,
understanding.
like I was asked the question, same question. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Sir, is there any automatic setup that we can configure background so that the logging will be done automatic?
What is the meaning of automatic? I did not
Meaning,
get it.
no, suppose dependencies are in the application properties. Suppose if you set that logging equal to yes, will it write into the log file?
In the Spring Boot, you no need to set it to yes also, because by default it is enabled. I did not set yes anywhere, right? By default it is happening.
That's true. But we are getting the logging object and all in the program. Do we really need to write that code, or is there any?
This is also not required. If you are using Logbot, this is also not required. You no need to get that logger object also manually. That is what, sir. So today is not the end of the session.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Today is just introduction. Basic idea I have given about logging. So I'm not giving the conclusion today.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yes, Spring Boot class is available, sir. 9:30 Spring Boot class is there today, both online and offline. Yes.
Okay.
Hello, sir. Are you completed Agile and Jira, sir? Jira
yes, sir. Jira and completed for the JRTP people, sir. Yes.
How do we access, sir?
If you are in the backup video plan, you can access those videos.
I am backup video plan, sir, but there is
no
you
can see them. The portal videos will be available for you.
Okay, sir. There is no in the backup videos, sir.
You don't know? You don't have backup videos?
I purchased the backup videos.
Please talk to admin team. They will explain you how to access it.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sir, even I also cannot access the videos, sir.
Sir, whoever is not able to access the videos, please talk to admin team. They will help you.
Admin team. Okay, sir. Sir, can we join that Spring Boot class, sir?
That is another separate batch, sir. That is enrolled. It's not free.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay.
And
so
anybody who don't know Spring Boot and microservices, guys, so it's better to join, because Spring Data JPA, WebMVC, REST API, microservices, in depth we are going to discuss in the Spring Boot microservices course. If anybody don't know the WebMVC, REST API, from next week we are going to start our mini projects development in the JRTP. So by this weekend we will complete this logging. The next week we will start with the mini projects development. So to work with the mini projects development, you should have strong knowledge on data JPA, WebMVC, REST API concepts. If anybody don't know, you can join for 9:30 batch now.
So one question, I also faced in interview. He asked two questions, like how do you do login in your code? So my answer was same like that. We use log4j or sl4j kind of those things. So he changed question. He asked, no, this is we do. It's okay. But my question is, every company have their own system to do logging or kind of tracking logging, whatever. What your company use in your project? How you do those things? What was
tracking? Tracking means he's asking about how do you monitor the logs.
Okay,
there are set of tools available to monitor the logs. I will explain in the log monitoring concept.
So kind of Splunk he was asking.
Yes, Splunk and EFK he is expecting.
Oh, okay.
So, sir, while opening form.xml, we are automatically getting error. How to resolve this? After closing that file, that error will be resolved.
No problem, sir. That is internet issue. It is not able to download some files from there. No issue. You can ignore that error. It won't stop your application execution.
Okay. Hello, Ashok. I think yesterday we are left with Git merge and difference between Git merge and Git rebase, right?
Yes, sir. I have given a task. Did you analyze?
Yeah. But I thought to you like you would explain something in the beginning of because
sure, sir. I will do that. I will do that. No issue. Just I gave the task for the people to analyze. I will do that.
Yeah, like few doubts. I understood the concept, but clear understanding not getting from the research.
Sure. I will discuss that much.
Yeah, thank you.
Just the simple, whenever you go for git merge while merging the branches, it will preserve the commit history. Rebase will not preserve the commit history. That is the main difference there.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you. With this, I'm stopping for today. Please
Sir,
do the
only
practice on this one. Tomorrow, we will continue with the logging only. Tomorrow, we'll understand more real-time scenarios for the logging implementation. Are you guys clear with my point?
Sir, one thing, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, failed to configure a data source like that. It is say showing to me in console, sir.
So if you add the data JPA dependency, then you will get that problem.
In application.properties only, no, sir. We need to configure that JPA details.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about starter data JPA dependency form.xml. Remove that.
Sir, starter data dependency.
Yes, correct.
In pom.xml, sir?
Yeah, you need to remove that in the pom.xml.
We need to remove or we need to keep, sir?
Remove.
Okay, sir. Thank you.